right, so it's 7:02 and this meeting is called to order. I'd like to begin by reading the Indigenous Solidarity Statement. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganyan-Gehaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. As for roll call, the sheet is going around. I have a substantial list of requests for excusal. So I've received requests for excusal from Rory, Tabia, Michaela, Julia, Khadija, Ahmed the counselor, Ali, Sally, Awatif, Mustafa, and Jared. And then we'll deal with the executives after because there's another standing regulation for that. So those are the requests for excusals from counselors. So it's up to council whether we want to excuse or not. Yes, Ahmed?
Excuse all of them.
Okay, do we have a second? Kemi, is there any discussion to be had? All right, so all those in favor of excusing, please raise your placards. 8, 9, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 0, perfect, so that carries. And I also received requests for excusal from executives Maria and Omar, who incur a penalty, a financial penalty if their excusals are not granted as per the standing rights. Yes, Layla? Okay, do we have a second? Daniel, is there any discussion to be had? Yes, Patrick?
Why is Omar not here?
We don't usually disclose the reasons. You can always message them if you want,
Yeah,
but it's just for,
Just
for personal sake. Yes, Daniel?
Oh, sorry,
Or do you have a
I
question?
thought
Oh, sorry. All right, all those in favor, please raise your placards. 9, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 0, perfect. So that carries. At this point, we're on approval of the agenda, so if there's anything to add, remove, modify, it can be done now. Yes, Ahmed. Oh, sorry, I missed you there.
Bill 62 contestation,
Sorry?
substantive. Bill 62
Oh.
contestation, substantive.
Atma?
I'd like to add two appointments, policy committee. There's one seat.
Yes, Ahmed?
So can we remove ABAC seats?
Yes, we
from the
can.
agenda?
Going around. Yes, Patrick?
Mentioned, but the most like.
Yep, yeah, what you sent out, online voting, is that okay as a name for the appointment?
Yeah.
Okay, Camden?
Audit RFP committee.
All right. Okay, I received a request to remove Awatif's point, which I can't remember what it's called right now. I received a request to remove CSU chair and minute keeper pay, Camden?
Yeah.
2, okay. So that will take it off the agenda. I think that's good. And just so we don't have to break Robert's rules later, CEO pay on the agenda?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And we had a resignation from a counselor who was on appointments committee. Veronica, can you confirm that? So
CCSL.
there. All right. Is there anything? Oh, yes, Layla.
Also, gender advocacy committee.
Okay. Under appointments or under?
Oh, just if we're mentioning committees that have had a spot, be given up on that.
Sorry, under appointments or creation? Appointments. Okay.
Or just move to remove.
Committee. All right. That is good. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, Layla.
Could you please add executive statement to informational and tickets to informational?
Okay.
Thank you.
Tickets. All right. Is there anything else to add, subtract, modify? All right. That being said, oh, sorry, Layla. I can't see you over there.
I'm sorry. the orientation postmortem doesn't appear in the consent agenda or on the agenda.
Oh, okay,
It was just-
I'll
it-
put that into consent. Unless anyone wants to talk about it. Going once, okay. All right, is there anything else to be modified on the agenda? All right, so if not, I just need a motion to approve the agenda and all items under consent. Asma? Thank you, we have a second? Sophie, thank you. So all those in favor of approving the agenda and all items under consent, please raise your placards. 9, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 0. All right, so I will just send this out to you all in PDF. If you'll give me just a moment. Thank you. All right, so with that, we can move on to appointments, beginning with CCSL. And Layla, this one's yours.
Yep, CCSL is the Concordia Council on Student Life. Their main function is to grant money to projects as well as disperse other funds related to student engagement. They meet on Friday mornings. The next meeting is this coming Friday at Loyola. There are, I believe, now 3. Veronica, do you know how many seats now? There's another one.
2 open seats.
Oh, there are 2 open seats for CCSL.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if anyone would like to nominate themselves or someone else, yes, Patrick?
I'm not interested about it because I haven't tried that.
Okay, so would you like to nominate yourself?
Yeah, man.
All right, do we have the second? Dylan? All right, would anyone else like to nominate themselves to the Concordia Council on Student Life? Okay, so if not, I'll give you a chance to motivate for yourself. Why would you like to sit on CCSL?
Well, I got involved with the staff, and it's similar to CCSL. Basically, I want to continue something like that. Even though if whatever would happen to the elections and result in an acting council, but I want to still get involved in that way.
Right, thank you.
Just one way for me to see other
Okay.
things.
All right, thank you very much. If there's no further discussion, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor of appointing Patrick to the CCSL, please raise your placards. 8, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions?
The person after that,
Yes.
where is the agenda? Like, is it on?
Oh,
the-
did I not?
Did you send it by email or
Oh.
Facebook?
I absolutely posted that not in the right place.
Okay.
Don't worry, it was like just another group that's probably going to be wondering why that's there. But it is now gone. And that was a really silly thing to do. So it will show up now. Thank you. And a bunch of people on my soccer team were going to be really confused. Moving on to 6B, which is Appointments Committee. Veronica?
Yeah, so Appointments Committee, we appoint students to different CSU committees, ad hoc and standing, and other university committees that have seats reserved for the CSU. I don't think, we might be meeting maybe once or twice for the end of the semester, but it's not reoccurring, so.
All right. Would anyone like to appoint themselves or someone else to the Appointments Committee? Yes, Rowan?
I'd like to appoint myself.
Or nominate
Or nominate
yourself.
myself, thank you.
All right, do we have a second? Kevin?
I'd like to appoint myself.
Is there anyone else who'd like to nominate themselves or someone else? Oh, no, sorry, there's 2 seats or 1? Just 1?
It's one seat.
Okay, so there's 1 seat. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves to the Appointments Committee? would you like to be on the appointments committee?
Gotta fill those committee seats. I've sat on it before twice now. It's a fun committee. It's chill.
All right, thank you. So if there is nothing further, we can move, yes, Kemi?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
We can move to a vote. So all those in favor of appointing Rowan to the appointments committee, please raise your placards. 8, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions. Rowan. Thank you very much, and congratulations, you are on the appointments committee. All right, if there's nothing further on this point, we can move on to policy committee. And Asma, this one's yours.
Yeah, so there's seat made available after Rory James' resignation at the policy committee. So if there's anyone who is interested, we do have capacity to have another member join us. We look at policies that are referred to us from council or that when there's standing regulations or anything else to look at. So if anyone has anything exciting that they want to work on, but still have time commitment to give, that'd be one interesting committee to join.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else, is there anyone who'd like to nominate themselves to the policy committee? If not, it'll come back.
How
Sorry.
many seats are there?
1.
Oh, okay.
If not, it'll come back next meeting. It's until the end of the year, so.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so if there's no one who'd like to sit on policy, we can,
Start thinking about it.
okay,
So,
Do you wanna-
reflecting on it.
come back to it?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
for maybe either now or, okay, fine. That's it.
Would you like to nominate yourself?
Of course I do. There's a thing I want to, yes.
Okay, do we have a second? Dylan? All right, is there anyone else who'd like to nominate themselves to the policy committee? Okay, Patrick, why would you like to sit on policy?
Basically, there's things what's going on there's things I want to change in something in the sign regulation. And it's to do with the election stuff, and then it's like a good way to get something sort of done there, that way.
Great, thank you. Okay, so if there's no further nominations, all those in favor of appointing Patrick to the policy committee, please raise your placards. 8, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 1. Great, so that carries. Congratulations, Patrick, you're on the policy committee. Which brings us to gender advocacy committee, and Layla, this one's yours.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear, but because there's no composition for that committee, there's no empty seat. There just was a seat vacated. Sorry, that was a miscommunication. So there, if someone is interested in joining it, they're welcome to, but there's no seat that must be filled.
Oh. Okay.
I think, sorry, I was talking to Asma at the same time as we were talking about
Oh, okay.
whether the seat was open, and I was unclear. It's my fault.
Okay, so if there is nothing to discuss under this point either?
No, if someone's interested in being part of the committee, they can just let me know because there's no official composition. So if they'd like to attend meetings, right now there's no restriction. Or if someone does want to join, they're welcome to do so, but there just isn't like a gap in the committee.
All right, so gender advocacy committee, you may contact Layla for additional information or if you would like to attend the meetings. So if there's nothing further, we can move on to 7A, which is anti-gentrification position, and Lexi, this one's yours.
Cool. Do I need to read out the motion?
Yes,
or-
please.
Whereas gentrification is the process by which impoverished neighborhoods and often racialized communities are displaced from their historical neighborhoods because of increases in the cost of living caused by an influx of affluent developers, business owners, and property owners. Whereas students tend to live on a moderate budget and are also pushed out of formerly affordable neighborhoods because of increasing costs of rent caused by gentrification. Whereas students as a group also often contribute to the process of gentrification because we live in working class neighborhoods, are often transitory and ill-informed about rental rights. Whereas students need affordable housing and have a responsibility to join in efforts to keep housing affordable and accessible for not just ourselves but also our communities. Whereas the CSU has been actively working to educate and empower students about their rights as tenants, most notably through the off-campus Housing and Resource Center. Be it resolved that the CSU take a position against gentrification, be it further resolved that the CSU actively supports initiatives working against gentrification and promotes community organizations working on these issues, be it further resolved that the CSU help promote anti-gentrification campaigns around Montreal.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second? Layla? And your motivation, Lexi?
Yeah, I think it's like all pretty much written here. Gentrification is something that's going to affect a lot of the student community. It raises our housing costs. It ruins the communities that we live in. It takes away the businesses that we love and replaces them with businesses we can't afford. But at the same time, students are often contribute to these problems by moving into working class neighborhoods, not knowing our rights, supporting businesses that push small businesses, locally owned businesses out, not pushing our landlords to not raise the rent to maintain the facilities, and further just that the work that Hojo does is so deeply tied to gentrification that I think it's kind of an obvious position for the CSU to take.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion we have? Yes, Dylan?
I'm just curious about this issue because I'm all for, and I believe the students would want to have affordable housing and things of those natures, but there's nothing illegal about what you were describing, property houses going up, valuations going up, when there is large demand in areas and people are moving into it, just as students move into areas and create student ghettos, in the actual definition of the word ghetto. These aren't things, these are common recurring things, and it's not breaking anything, it's a progression of society as we see within communities. Areas around Montreal have historically changed, and we see them fluctuating between different classes throughout time. So I'm curious of why this specific, and not to endorse, the creation of more affordable housing in Montreal or things along that line.
Did you want to respond directly?
I'll let other people run the
Okay.
go.
Sophie?
Yeah, I guess to sort of respond to that, the issue of gentrification might not be illegal, but legality and morality or a political position aren't always the same thing. I think it's important that the CSU is already undertaking an affordable housing project, so this is just a position to sort of address issues already being addressed by the CSU and take sort of a more proactive stance in saying, you're right, it might not be illegal and these things might happen over time, but that's not necessarily the right thing, and to take a stance in protecting marginalized and vulnerable populations by supporting an anti-gentrification bill is also important.
Thank you. Layla?
Yeah, I think that the fact that we have many positions that aren't specifically taking a position against something illegal, but are taking a position in general, so I don't think that would set a new precedent. But also, on a personal note, I was personally evicted from my apartment this year because someone bought the building and decided to renovate everything and then increase the rent in a way that made it completely unaffordable for everyone there, and I had to move out and pay $200 more in rent, in a shared apartment. So it is something that affects students in both ways that Lexi described, and I think it's in the fact that we even have a point through which we do education around housing and rights. It would make sense for that mandate to be more clearly sewn into the work the CSU is doing on both sides of the issue, both sides of gentrification, both in making it happen and in implementing it.
Thank you. Daniel?
I'm just curious how would taking a position affect gentrification at all? Yes, we can stand against it, but what are we possibly going to do about it? How are we going to stop multimillionaires from doing it all? I'm just curious.
Well, there's actually lots of initiatives and community groups working against gentrification, fighting their councils, fighting for their rights as members of the community that we could support. And we could also bolster, the CSU already does some education around tenant rights, but we could bolster that.
Thank you. Kenny?
No. But I feel like we have many positions that are as Layla was saying, that it's not a concrete action. It's just put a ground and it puts a platform so the ground can be built on. So if somebody will have a project, for example, it can base its proposition on at council with this motion. Sorry, I'm losing my vocabulary tonight.
Eamon and then Dylan, or were you? Okay. Dylan?
But the way that it's being discussed here, it seems more as against the development of neighborhoods to the local population. Housing prices going up is because there's a large demand in that area, right? Those same large demands is what creates people to take single-family homes and turn them into condominiums so that more people can live there, and we can see the development of areas, right? Large organizations coming in and moving into certain shops, well, we see that because there's a demand for it and people are moving towards it. But this just seems doesn't seem like the right direction. I think more something towards endorsing student housing or affordable housing would be something more along the lines that should be done rather than the self-progression of neighborhoods due to the local populations and what they want. Students do gentrification when they move into large areas around campuses.
Thank you. So I have a speakers list of Rowan, Sophie, and then Teddy.
Yeah, a couple things. I believe the CSU already has several positions, or at least referendum questions that were backed. I'm assuming they were put into the positions book for like affordable student housing. So I think this adds on to it, and I think one of the main reasons behind this motion is not so much to like change completely what we're doing or anything, but like change how we work towards student housing and making sure that we're working towards student housing in an ethical manner that isn't like destroying communities. So like places like Oshtega, where I lived when I first went, is like somewhere that's being heavily gentrified. If we were to build expensive condos, like, well, like fancier student housing, like the one we're currently building near, where is it, Plateau, La Fontaine area, if we were to build that in Oshtega, that would be like very problematic for the community. And so like this motion helps to make sure that when we're pushing for better student housing, when we're pushing for these kinds of things, we're doing it in a manner that isn't directly harming other communities. Even if those aren't necessarily like student communities, I think it's still important that we're doing these things in an ethical manner.
Thank you. Sophie? I call the question. Okay, do we have a second? Kemi? There's no discussion on a call to question, so all those in favor of calling the question, please raise your placards. 9, all those opposed, 0, and any abstentions, 0, because we're only 9 people. So that carries. All right, so all those in favor of the motion as read out by Lexi, please raise your placards. 6, all those opposed? 1, 2, and any abstentions? 1. Perfect. So that carries, which means that the positions book will be coming back to council next council through the consent agenda. Okay. So with that, if there's no more discussion on 7A, we can move on to 7B, which is food system. And Rowan, this one's yours.
Whereas the CSU adopted the following position in the 2013 general elections, quote, that the CSU actively support affordable, sustainable, and student-run food services and service initiatives on campus, end quote. Whereas the university's upcoming food contract current food contract is set to expire by 2020, whereas the upcoming request for proposal, RFP process, represents an opportunity to increase students' involvement and control of the Concordia food system, be it resolved that the CSU commit to supporting student-led initiatives attempting to increase student control of the food system through the upcoming RFP, including but not limited to the following ways: printing, design, outreach, and campaign resources. Be it further resolved that the CSU executives be mandated to work with student groups to facilitate and fund research to increase knowledge on the Concordia food systems and its possibilities.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Charlotte? All right, your motivation, Rowan?
So I think a lot of this is fairly clear. Essentially, the university's food contract is going to run out. There's going to be a negotiating period, and this is a good time to increase student control of the food system. A lot of different student groups are organizing, starting now already, to work around that. The CSU has positions on this. The CSU should obviously support this based on its position book. And it did last time in 2015 when this same thing happened. However, I just figured it was best to draft a motion specifically for this RFP, just to like make things clear, and so that this year's exec and next year's execs who will be working on this more like are clear in what they're meant to do and don't have to like worry about walking a fine line with council. And then for research, a similar thing that happened in 2015 where there's a big research project based around the current food quality at Concordia. Whether or not that's going to be the exact focus of the research, like different people are discussing what should be researched most. And so like it makes sense for the CSU to be working with that research, and there's no exact definition of what that will be because that'll kind of be an ongoing discussion. But it makes sense that more research be done into this so that the student groups who are mobilizing around this have as much information and can make the best decisions both in terms of the campaign itself as well as what comes afterwards.
Great, thank you. Is there any discussion to be had on the motion as read by Rowan? Right, so if there's nothing further, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor of the motion, please raise your placards. 9, all those opposed, 0, and any abstentions? 0. Perfect. So that carries unanimously. Is there any more discussion on 7B? Okay, so if not, we can move on to 7C, and Rowan, this one's yours.
Hi again. Be it resolved that the CSU Council add the following to the positions book under the heading International Affairs, that the CSU oppose the privatization of war in the military-industrial complex.
Second, Sophie, your motivation?
This is kind of something that I think a lot of people would just kind of assume the CSU had some position towards, but we don't. It's worded broadly on purpose, specifically to not have to keep Veterans Affairs completely separate, because I don't want this motion to have any effect on that. But essentially there was an event held by the CSU recently which changed in its dialogue. As it was originally posted, it was something about information surrounding the military industrial complex as job opportunities. As time changed, I believe the event description actually changed as well, but that seems like something that the CSU should not be doing. Yeah.
Oh, the link between the Great Motion and the event, and where exactly we were promoting or endorsing the military or fighting for the military industry.
Do you have a direct response?
I don't remember the description off the top of my head, but from what I remember of the original description, like I said, I believe it was changed eventually. The description of the event was discussing specifically private companies that deal in military technologies of some sort. I don't remember exactly, and discussions on job opportunities within those. As it went on, it was shifted towards discrimination of people from certain countries within these fields, which is as a specific thing makes more sense, but I believe the original one didn't have as much of a focus on that.
Do you have a follow-up?
So just to respond to this, the first name was ITAR, International Traffic in Aerospace, International Traffic and Arms Regulations. And the description itself, it wasn't about Army, it was about aerospace industry, and it was written on purpose because this regulation affects people from working in aerospace industry. Again, I still don't know where exactly it was mentioned that we were endorsing the military workforce, or we were fighting for it, or we were doing whatever. The event was changed because some executive mentioned it doesn't look good on the this description should be changed, and I was open, as well as people who were working on this, just make it clear that is not related. And again, this event wasn't from the beginning nor the end about military workforce, because there is lots of areas, but that one specifically I can reply why we were having this event and why ITAR and why it's affecting students. But again, I'm still curious, and I would like some clarification and about this, where is the military side in this?
I'll give you one more direct response if you want.
I mean, I've given the best answer I've got from what I understood of the description, and again, I don't have it in front of me. It was trafficking of technologies. Maybe it just wasn't clear, but this isn't directly related to the motion at hand. This was something I mentioned as something I saw. It's not mentioned in even the whereases, never mind the actual position.
Thank you. Asma?
Yeah, I just have a bit of information that might shed a bit of light on the executive concerns. Originally, the description that was given was problematic to hear. So I looked into it with the co-host to see what was being addressed, and it seemed to be centered on racial and job discrimination within the aerospace industry for students that are studying at Concordia within aerospace itself, for engineering. So their focus was not about military, but the original wording definitely gave concern in the way it was addressed, and they confirmed that this was not about creating endeavors in that sector or anything. So the description was then revised by the co-host and uploaded. So this is what I have.
Thank you. Sophie? I called the question. Okay. Do we have a second? Charlotte. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your placards. 4, 6, 7. All those opposed? 1, 2. And any abstentions? 0. All right, so the question's been called. So all those in favor of the motion as read by Rowan, please raise your placards. 6. All those opposed? 1, 2. And any abstentions? 1. So that carries. And there is no speakers list, but Ahmed, I think I saw your placard up.
Yes, it's just a clarification, just for everyone to know what this event was. I believe, first of all, I'm really upset of having this discussion right now. I believe if someone has any issue, it's still important for me as an executive. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything around. I'm not I don't have a PhD in the CSU history. It's still important if someone has anything, any advice or anything, to address it to the executive or someone else. If the executive is arrogant to someone else, at least hearing this concern will help us improve the work. It's this work, it's not helpful for me or anyone else to discuss an event that already happened 20 days ago or 15 days ago. I feel we should be working more for the benefit of students rather than chasing or catching mistakes. I'm not calling out anyone, but it's just I believe it's sad to say this. And ITAR, it's about classification of technology, and unfortunately in aerospace, half or more than 75% of the technology that is being used is classified as military. So therefore, the space industry itself, and its own, it's classified as military, whether it comes to space shuttles, whether it comes to satellite, and so on. This technology, therefore, anyone who will have a degree in aerospace wouldn't have any chance to work in these companies if they are coming from the rogue countries, which there are 25 countries, among them China, which we have many international students coming here spending $50,000 for a degree that they might not have a chance. Again, no one's perfect, but it's really very appreciated whenever we have any concern. Just send an email, send a Facebook message, book an appointment, text message, whatever it is. And again, I was personally and the co-host, we were very open and we listened to any concern. It's not fair.
Thank you very much. Rowan?
I just want to reiterate that this motion was not meant to be directly tied to the event. It was something I mentioned in passing.
Right, thank you. Okay, so if there's nothing further on 7C, we can move on to 7D, which is AGM. And Layla, this one's yours.
Whereas an AGM is to be held each year in accordance with bylaw 5.2, be it resolved that the CSU AGM be held April 30th at 6 p.m.
All right, for a second. Kenny, do you want to motivate?
Not really.
Right. Yes, Rowan?
Does April 30th, this is directed at Camden, does April 30th give us enough time to select an auditor and bring a recommendation?
1 second.
Yeah. April 30th is a Monday for anyone who's wondering.
Yeah, I can make we said we have 10 days to evaluate, so
Okay, it's good.
should be okay.
All right, are there any more questions or concerns regarding April 30th? Okay, so if not, all those in favor, please raise your placards. 7, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 2. Perfect, so that carries. The AGM will be held on April 30th at, sorry, what time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Perfect. So with that, we can move on to 7E, which is CEO pay. And Camden, this one's your motion.
Okay. Whereas council approved a budget of up to $9,000 for the chief electoral officer's honorarium, whereas the CEO has worked 487 hours at $16.50 an hour for a total of $8,035.50 from the time he was appointed to the previous pay period, which ended on March 18, 2018. Whereas the CEO has submitted a timesheet with additional hours totaling $2,904 for pay period ending on March 18, 2018. Whereas that would surpass the limit set by council by $2,285.50. for a total of $10,939.50, whereas the additional hours have already been completed by the CEO and there is a requirement for additional hours to follow the directives of the Judicial Board for recount and complete the CEO report to be presented at the AGM. Be it resolved that Council increase the budget for the CEO's honorarium a total of $13,300, and be it further resolved that the CEO be required to track the hours worked and budget as no further increases will be considered. I can post this on the Facebook page.
I think I sent it
Yeah,
out,
we
but
have it.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Right, do we have a second? Sophie, your motivation?
So it was flagged by the accountant that the CEO was going over the pay set by it was in November council. So I wasn't aware that this was something that passed through council. So the accountant flagged it to me, and then I saw. So I thought council, seeing as you supervise the CEO, should be aware of this before he goes over the budget by that much. And as there's still work to be done, could be over by a couple thousand. So.
Thank you. Dylan?
I was curious, historically, what has been their pay in the past prior years?
I think last year it was less. It was in the minutes of council, but it was just rounded up by, I think, around a few $100s. But the reasons for why it went up over 9,000 this year are in the document that was provided today by the CEO himself.
Thank you.
It was in,
Where's that done?
it was, oh, was it not? It was not sent out? Okay, I thought it was. Okay, so I can share that with the group. He provided it today. He didn't. He told me he sent it.
What was
to you.
this? The
Oh, the 2K.
Isn't it in the final documents email?
Yeah, I thought it
Oh,
was.
sorry, then. Let me just check.
No, I don't know that.
I don't see it.
Okay, I'll post it.
Oh, the document sent to me by the CEO was called Salary Increase CEO.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
that's why it was probably misleading. So he submitted that to council today, and all of the reasons outlined are there. I've been in contact with him just shortly today over the phone, so I can't justify any of the information in the document, but it's there for your reference.
Is there any discussion or questions? Yes, Rowan?
Sorry, were there other factors?
No, well, Patrick, but it was after you.
Resentment, so looking first.
Okay, Patrick?
Well, because I know why the increase went up because of things that he did wrong during the campaign and stuff, or what he paid for FAFSA. But the things that, I don't know, I find it a little worrisome because whatever would increase wherever we agree to, but he has to be here. Kind of just say, oh, I'm going to give you an increase.
Just to clarify, also, I, as the chair, am the official channel of communication between council and the CEO. So if anyone has any questions or they want me to relay anything to Nicholas, just let me know, tell me in council, after council, email me, anything like that, and I'll make sure that it gets back to them. Layla?
Yeah, just to be clear, the $10,000 that we allocated to FAFSA did not come out of the CEO
No, I
pay.
know that.
Okay, just the money that's there is only related to the hours worked, not related to any other election expenses.
Thank you. Camden? Rowan?
I move to amend to add be it resolved that the pay increase be contingent on the chief electoral officer presenting his report to council and
AGM.
the AGM.
To the AGM. In the bylaws.
Right there, give me a second.
Right. Do we have a second? Dylan, your motivation?
Yeah, so according to the standing regulations, the annual general election report should be done only to the AGM, but I think it's especially appropriate where, according to the same standing regulation, he was also meant to give present his by-election report, which was simply never done, and I think that's contingent as part of his job, like in the standing regulations. So I think that it's important that both these reports be presented to council, because this was never done. And I also think where he didn't show up last time, or they didn't show up last time, to present their report, I think that's especially important that they actually show up. I mean, if council wants to amend so that it's only the annual general meeting, fine, but at least one of the two.
Okay, so there's an amendment currently on the table. Yes, Layla?
I would suggest making this separate to the issue of pay. I don't think it's, for one, I don't know it's actually legal for us to withhold pay based on hours already worked, but also I don't really think that that's a fair way to operate if the hours have already been worked. I think if we were gonna make something contingent, I would say that it would be based on an hourly breakdown in the hours that have not yet been worked for future accountability, but I personally feel really uncomfortable holding someone's paycheck in them showing up to a meeting where they probably are going to have to face the fact that there are people who are very frustrated with them, and I think that that's not very fair. I think it would be more appropriate to have a separate motion, just reaffirming the fact that they have an obligation to come to the meeting and present, but there's no legal way that we can not pay them because they didn't come to a meeting.
Thank you. So I have a speakers list of Dylan, Camden, and Rowan.
Well, one thing that we could do is make it grant them an honorarium of X amount in completion of the work. My concern that I have is that we'll get another report a little while later that he worked even additional hours because he wasn't able to complete the work. And from what it seems like, one of the main reasons why he wasn't able to complete the work in the timely manner and requires more hours is because of his own decisions of who he hired as DEO, one of them not being elected for the majority of the period and the other one as well having difficulties with them. He took the decision on to do it, and remember that I don't believe they're considered like full-on salaried employees where we have specific hours given to them. So we could grant it as an honorarium and make a condition. That way he'd be forced to complete it within the time frame to be granted the additional salary.
Thank you. Camden?
Just so everyone knows as well, like, so the 2,900 that is currently on the table is like hours that's already been worked to be processed this coming week. So I think it would make sense to like tie conditions to the upcoming hours that have yet to be worked, but this motion deals with the pay that's already been, earned. So I don't think we should wait to pay him for any reason.
Thank you. Rowan?
100%.
Okay, Sophie?
Do we have like timesheets? Because I don't know. I don't want to tie this to my own experience, but as someone who was a candidate this election, when there were no posted office hours for the CEO for the majority of campaign period, I find it a little difficult to look at the report that was submitted because I'm not sure how that's possible. I'm trying to say this as diplomatically as possible.
Do you want to directly respond?
Well, like I don't supervise them either. So normally the general coordinator was in contact with them. So their timesheets were going to the accountant, and the general coordinator would be copied on those emails. If they're like that's all I can say really.
Thank you. Dylan?
A motion to change it from salary to honorarium, conditional to receive the amount of whatever it is, conditional upon providing the reports that Rohan had mentioned previously. Yeah. I don't know how it's going to look with the...
The only thing is that there's, the amendment on the table is to change pay to honorarium, but currently they're not receiving an honorarium, so the motion...
Granting them an honorarium for.
It would be an additional honorarium?
Oh, it would just be that they'd be changed. Oh, yeah, you're right. I don't know if this is the
yeah, because
on the motion.
it would be an amendment to
It'd have to be
something.
after this motion.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's it.
You get it.
Did you have anything else to?
No, I'll wait and bring it back up again later.
Okay. I think I saw another
I
placard.
just
Kenny?
have like a information one. So like, the CEO was to report to the general coordinator, but the current general coordinator was running for election.
During the election period, they didn't have any communication, and that's why I was
Okay, so you
copied
would-
into that email. But that was the only time. I'm saying for the
Okay.
rest of the year, I wasn't in contact with the CEO at all.
But you were kind of delegated to deal with the CEO at that time.
Under the standing regulation, the CEO's access to CSU's resources are overseen by the CSU's general manager. Council appoints the CEO, but they don't have a boss. For example, like I'm the communication between council and the CEO, but I don't have any authority over them the executives don't have any authority over them, and the general manager oversees their work. So the closest thing to a boss would be the general manager. So I don't know if that clarifies anything? Yeah. Is there any more discussion to be had on the amendment?
Can you read it out again, please?
Yep, it's the amendment to add a be it resolved clause that the pay increase be contingent on the CEO presenting their report to council at the AGM. So all those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3. Okay, was that Lexi? Was that it? Okay, 3. And any abstentions? 2, 3. Okay, that equals 9. Okay, so it fails to achieve a 50 plus 1, so the amendment fails. And we're back on the main motion, and I have no speakers list.
Can you, so the main motion is on?
Yes. If anyone would like to, yes, Camden?
I think it would be useful if, based on the report, the document that the CEO provided, the council would decide upon an amount of hours that they'd be willing to accept for the remaining tasks, and to just add that into the motion as a maximum.
Dylan?
My only worry with treating it as a salary is that if he does not complete the work in time, he will still receive the amount, and we're going to be stuck in the same situation later on. Having seen that his report is, the reason why he didn't accomplish all this was because of mismanagement and misstaffing on his own part, seeing how people have brought up the fact that they question the amount of work he's been doing, and also the fact that there is no oversight into these timesheets of how many hours they've worked. I could see there being a problem that the work is not completed in the timely manner and the estimates will run over.
Thank you. Layla?
I think it would be important in this case not to change the system of pay for a position that's not always held by the same person, because generally I think this system makes sense to have someone be paid for the amount of hours. For example, by-elections, general elections, as even mentioned in the CEO's report, elections could take very different amounts of time based on the number of candidates, the number of complaints. I think that there are several things that we could do policy-wise to strengthen the way the hours are reported potentially, or how that's managed. But I think changing to an honorarium would drastically change the position. And I think in a lot of ways, if this all boils down to how much we wind up paying them in the end, I think that is kind of problematic if we're talking about withholding pay, because council deems them to have not done their job to the right extent. And also we would still need to pay them a living wage, which would amount to basically the same thing, because we would then calculate it based off the hours of work that it would take.
Thank you. Daniel?
I think the fact that nobody actually knows if he's well, like we know if he's do we know if he's clocking in or clocking out? Does he go in on a computer, or like how does it work? Does he just pull a number out of the air?
The CEO would report the expenses to Beacon. I have no relationship with the finances of that, so I can't tell you that. I'm not CC'd on any of the pay. I don't know if Camden, you are?
I have one example of that, which I can pull up.
But it would go to the CSU's accountant Beacon, correct?
Yeah, but it is something that he just drafts up. I don't think there's any like check-in system for.
So he could just decide one day that he's working on it when really he's having a slice of pizza and beer. Okay.
Thank you. Layla?
No.
I respect. Okay, is there any more discussion to be had on this point? Did you have anything to clarify, Camden? Sorry, I thought you were looking for something.
I'm looking for the timesheet. There's no information other than the hours worked. Like, it doesn't give like a task breakdown or anything like that. So.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Asma.
I would just like to emphasize to keep two matters separate. The lack of current oversight management separate to what the issue is on the table, which is more to do with pay and budgetary details. Otherwise, we're going to complicate the matter much more.
Okay.
So.
Correct.
I think when you're discussing pay and lack of oversight and clocking hours, I think that is one issue personally. Like, if we're talking about discussions of pay and then like saying these are the hours we have no way to actually verify them. Like, I think that's tied together. I don't think that needs to be separated. Like.
Thank you. Okay, is there any more discussion? Yes, Daniel?
To clarify what Asma was saying is that it's more like just, we should talk about it in another separate issue, right?
Asma? Oh, sorry, so the question was just to clarify this.
You just wanna like discuss the pay that we currently have, and then the oversight of the CEO's working hours is another issue completely.
Well, not, go ahead. There is some
For the
overlap.
future, we should have an oversight for the
The issue
CEO.
is if we haven't got a mechanism in place right now, and it's not clear, then trying to hold the person accountable against a higher standard doesn't seem fair. But if we have something we can benchmark against, then I think that in itself would be relevant to the pay. So as far as emotion it relates to looking at the maximum, I think this is the best we can restrict ourselves, right? We can't talk about, well, how about this or how about this when we don't really know who the person answers to or what level of detail that we're requested to provide and how it's worked in the past. So I think there's ways of complicating the conversation or just looking at within the jurisdiction of what we had, how we could operate.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion to be had on the motion on the table? Would anyone like the be a resolved reread or anything? Yes. Okay.
Be it resolved that council increase the budget for the CEO's honorarium to a maximum of $13,300. Be it resolved that the CEO be required to track the hours worked and budget as no further increase will be considered.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if there's no further discussion on the motion, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, and any abstentions? 6. All right, so the motion on the table fails, and we're back to no speakers list. So if anyone, yes, Camden?
I think if we don't have a motion tonight to cap the budget, he'll just continue to be paid. So.
Thank you. Kevin?
Well, okay, so here's the thing, like, I totally understand that it's not fair to, like, wait for, I'm kind of trying to look at, like, yeah, like, not fair to pay someone for the hours that they've done, and, like, to kind of, like, put that above their head while, like, waiting for a report, but I feel very uncomfortable, like, giving this money without having any idea of what has been done, like, in terms of kind of a breakdown. So it could be not in an AGM, which is like very like large, but it could be maybe at council that they present their report before we agree to increase or like to a certain amount those hours. Yeah, so that's all.
Thank you. Dylan?
Percent.
Just to clarify, according to the bylaws, they need to present the report at the AGM. So whether or not they also do at council is irrelevant, but they do have to do it at the AGM. All right, so I have a speakers list of Layla, Rowan, and then Kemi.
First of all, I think we have a position about a living wage. I really feel uncomfortable if we don't come to some kind of decision that this person be paid for their work, or at least make that clear that we're not collectively deciding to not pay them and then not making a decision about capping it either. I think that part of I think the fact that the CEO doesn't have a direct supervisor means no one's really in a very clear position of responsibility for this, but I think there are several people who could bear the responsibility of having recognized that we needed a better system to track these hours before it became an issue, because I think if there hadn't been so many contentious issues throughout this election, then people wouldn't be scrutinizing the hours worked so closely. And I think that that's something to bear in mind. Not necessarily that people shouldn't be clearly tracking their hours, but just that if there was going to be an issue with how the hours are being tracked, that probably should have been identified beforehand, not following the going over the hours. So I think there's clearly like some people look confused. I just mean to say that this person has worked for the CSU for several months and has been tracking their hours, I believe, in the same way the whole time. So if there was ever gonna be an issue where we were gonna choose to not, to cap their pay and cut off the number of, if the level of transparency about the hours worked isn't enough, that should have been recognized earlier and not now, now being a problem after a very contentious election. I think that part of that responsibility isn't on the CEO so much as the people who are supervising them, which isn't directly someone, which makes it harder to make this someone's responsibility to know. But all that to say that the report should I think what would be more appropriate is to make sure that we maybe have a motion reaffirming the CEO's presence at being required at the AGM to present the report, and also that from now onwards that hours are tracked and that information is sent to council. But beyond that, I don't. I agree with what's been said about the fact that it's perhaps strange to approve a large amount of money without a clear idea of where that's coming from, but I just don't think that that it's necessarily fair to withhold and demand more information when that hasn't happened all year, and now it's happening.
Thank you. Rowan?
Anderson.
Kenny?
Yeah, I'm just confused on like, well, but no, maybe it's not relevant. Never mind.
Patrick?
Well, it's not that I know it's a lot of responsibility, a lot of work involved because I had a chance to work as a poll collector and stuff in elections for ASFA and CSU. But I think there's certain things in like I wanted answers about questions about certain things in the report on the by-elections because there were a lot of things I wanted to ask them about. That's why being there present when answer these questions should be like put about no matter AGM or council, because I think that's a lot of things there's stuff I don't understand in his report, and wish that he had a chance to be there to answer those questions. But I'm also because I also am uncomfortable with the lot that we suggested. That's why. You know how much hours, how late. That means that's what we have to make a better way to make sure that the system to clock the hours of the person who becomes the CEO in the past, future, and on. Basically, that's my opinion.
Thank you. Philip?
I'm curious at why our CEO isn't present here today when this conversation's happening. That way we can have a back and forth conversation. I think for this to go forward, there does need to be conditions that he adheres to all of our standing regulation and submit the appropriate report, because our main concern is that the work will not be done. I was also curious at his his state of mind when he was submitting these timesheets. He knows that his maximum salary that he was supposed to receive for the amount of work was $9,000, and he kept submitting timesheets after he's gone well above those amount of hours. And was he expecting to be paid? Like, how did he think it was going to go down?
The CEO told me that he could not be at the meeting tonight, just to clarify. Kevin?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, and also, it was this last timesheet requisition that put him way over, so.
Kevin?
So it was for the last week that happened?
The last
Oh, the
pay
last
period.
2 weeks?
Yeah, the last pay period.
Okay. Just to clarify, I think somebody had mentioned that the CEO didn't submit a by-elections report. They actually did, and it was for the March 5th.
That's why.
Oh, sorry, I must have
I
misunderstood.
thought he didn't present, which according to standing regulation, does it say? Yeah, according to standing regulation 374, he also has to do a report to council in the case of by-elections, which he didn't.
Was that, can someone confirm if that meeting was canceled? Was my only, I might be
My
mixing up
belief is
meetings.
that-
No, it was not. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. Yes, Ro?
My belief is that he has to do a presentation, he has to be there to answer questions. That's what happened last year. That's, I believe, how it happened at the AGM.
It's not explicit.
The standing regulation?
Yes. Right. Yes, Dylan?
I'll bring a motion. Be it resolved that council increases the budget of the CR honorarium to 13,000, and that the pay will only be granted conditional of fulfilling all the conditions outlined in the standing regulations. So then he would have to do the presentation, would have to be present, whatever the conditions are in there, he'd have to do that to then receive the remaining amount.
Do we have a second? Patrick, your motivation?
Motivation is that this this work still needs to be done. We're concerned that perhaps he will not get all of the work done in the necessary time frame, or would book too many out, go over the hours. This would mean that with this current condition in there, he would receive the pay only once all of his conditions are met, only once he represents, and he would still be receiving annual living wage throughout it as well.
Camden?
This motion doesn't address the money that's already earned, that he already worked towards, like the 2,285. So like, I guess we can amend to pay that as well.
Yes, Dylan?
I think what would happen then under this case is that up into the 9,000, which is the original budget, he would get that outright, and then any additional money would only be allocated to him after he's completed his duties. But he would be accruing salary throughout that time period.
Thank you. Layla?
We can't not pay. Like, those hours are already worked and logged. We can't not pay someone who's paid an hourly wage for those hours.
Kevin?
And I think it makes sense that if this decision is made now after certain work's been done, that it applies to the work that's to be done. Like I don't, like, yeah.
Dylan?
That's fair.
Okay.
Did you want to take the motion off the table? Was that?
An amendment.
An amendment, okay, what's the amendment?
It'd be that,
2,285.
yeah, that would be granted to him automatically, and then he could keep working, but the additional pay would only be granted once he fulfills all of his commitments.
Okay, can we formulate that into a coherent motion?
Yeah.
Just so, I'll give you a couple seconds to, just so that we have the correct wording and there's no ambiguity, especially when we're talking about things like pay.
So I believe this would be proper once it's be resolved that the council increase the budget for the CEO's honorarium a total of 13,000. Be resolved that any accrued hours for the period ending March 18, 2018 be granted. Be resolved that any additional salary be remitted once the conditions outlined in the standard regulations have been fulfilled.
Just a matter of discussing standing regulations and motions. Would you be able to just find the standing regs? Because I know that saying all conditions in the standing regulations, like there could be something in there that's really strange sometimes. So if you could just mention the standing regs. Like for example, the minute keeper is supposed to record minutes of committee meetings, and that doesn't happen. So just sometimes there's things that need to be changed, so you don't want to accidentally tell them to fulfill a condition that they don't actually do.
Maybe best Ron knows the section, but he's not here right now.
Was it 379, someone said? Or Rowan's not here.
Yeah, he's not here.
Yeah, we'll give it a second. Yes, Kemi?
Yeah, I would just kind of like, if you could clarify. So like the amendment you're proposing, I'm just wondering if like, it is gonna open this window on like the CEO asking for even more money. So like, because like it was saying part of like Ken's main motion was as budget has no further increase will be considered, and yours doesn't, and I'm just wondering if it's already addressed in your motion.
So I
Do you have a
think
direct?
there is not a cap. The cap is setting the new budget at the $13,000 mark, and that he wouldn't get paid any more of. He would get paid for all the back work he's done, but any forward work would only be, the salary would only be remitted once he fulfills his duties. So if he doesn't fulfill his duties and needs to work a few more hours, unfortunately, those hours will not be, has to be included in the 1,300 granted.
Rowan, what was the standing regulation you had mentioned a second ago about?
374, I think under rereading, submit a report. Yeah, so the report had to be submitted. I guess it doesn't explicitly say that it has to be presented.
And for the AGM, that's bylaw. Let me just find the number. Are you amenable to specifying the?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Just so we have the correct numbers. Yeah, so bylaw 5.2 states the annual general meeting of members shall be held solely for the following purposes, and 5.2a is receiving the chief electoral officer's report on the annual general elections of the student union and on any student union referendums or by-elections held concurrently. So that would be standing regulation 374 and bylaw 5.2a. Is everyone amenable to that? All right. Is there any more discussion to be had on the motion on the table?
It was the amendment, right?
Yes, no, the amendment was kind of accepted. Right, so the motion as a whole? Okay, so if there's nothing further, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor, please raise your placards.
Would you be able to like put it first
Oh,
so I can read
sure.
it?
Could you actually just upload it to the council group? Thanks.
It's just making sure, standing regulation 3.74.
374.
374 and bylaw 5.2 and 5.2a, correct?
Well, 5.2a.
Oh, just A.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Supposed to be a market building.
Oh, Layla, did you have a?
Sorry, just asking to point out, I think the numbers of the standing regulations have changed, and it's in an older document that it's 374, but it is a different number now.
Oh.
Just for, if we're gonna name standing regulations.
Do you have the number?
Yeah, I'm gonna find it, sorry. It's now 378.
378, perfect. Thank you very much.
Or, sorry, I'm not sure if it's the one about what the report needs to contain or the submission of a report. It's,
The submission of.
okay, it's maybe also 377 and 378 for clarity's sake. They're both about the report.
All right. Is everyone amenable to 377? The CEO shall submit a report of the annual general elections, the annual general meeting of the members, or to council in the case of a by-election. The report of the CEO shall contain, and then there's a bunch of things it needs to contain. Is everyone all right with that? Perfect. Okay. Is it in the groups or?
Yes, it's 377 and 378, correct?
Alright, so is everyone all right with the wording of the motion? Okay, so if everyone's okay with it, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor, please raise your placards. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect, so that carries. Is there anything else to be discussed in the matter of CEO pay? Right, so if not, we can move on to, oh, sorry, Kevin, did you?
It's not exactly about pay, it's about like the report in itself, and I know you're the main contact.
Oh, yes, if you have
So,
something you want
yeah.
to.
Would you prefer like for me to tell you after, or can I just do it?
Yeah, if you have something to say now.
Yeah, I'm just could the CEO kind of like further like put some more detail on final week of office hours that was put on the salary increase that they sent?
Okay. And I know, Rowan, you had a question as well?
Yeah, he said that one of the tasks he has to do is doing the recount for ENCS Senate candidates, which is true, but according to the standing regulations, he also has to do a recount for Arts and Science Council. Can you ensure that he knows that, or sorry, can the chair ensure that he knows that? Thank
You need that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Is there anything else to be communicated to the CEO? All right. So if not, we can move on to 7F, which is Bill 62 consultation. And Ahmed, this one's yours.
So the reason why it's here because
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'm bringing this motion back for two things. First, when I went to sign the check and I was looking the minute, I found that I did a mistake in mixing the names of the law firm with the non-profit organization. And the second one, because the general coordinators need to sign for the intervention. So I'm gonna read the be it resolved. I uploaded the motion on the Facebook group. So be it resolved that CCU has duly mandated the law firm of Ole Nadeau as its legal representative in the CCU court intervention in the application for judicial review against Bill 62 filed as mentioned herein above. Be it further resolved that the CCU has duly mandated the acting CCU general coordinator to sign for and represent the CCU in any legal proceeding involving CCU court intervention in the application for judicial review against Bill 62 filed and as mentioned herein above.
Okay, thank you. So in theory, we should have had a motion to revisit something previously considered. Can we just accept that? This was a motion from last week that just had a couple of amendments, so just so we don't have to vote twice. Council okay with that? Perfect. Okay. Ahmed, do you want to, or sorry, we need a second. Kemi, do you want to motivate?
So the motivation is just to have the motion with the correct wording in the minutes, and also for the future, for the archive sake, also to have the correct motion. And second, because the general coordinator right now, the process of signing the interventions, so it's just again for the archive.
Right. Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions on the motion? Okay, so if not, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor of the Bill 62 consultation amendments, please raise your placards. 8. All those opposed? 0. And any abstentions? 0. All right, so that carries. And we're, if there's nothing further on 7F, we are now on 7G, which is Audit RFP Committee. And Kevin, this one's yours.
Whereas the CSU's contract with our auditor is set to expire, be it resolved that the CSU form an ad hoc committee in order to provide council with a recommendation of which auditor to select of those who place a bid. Be it further resolved that the committee be made up of Camden Bigart, Omar Riaz, Robert Henry, Viken Hamidian, and Rowan Gaudet.
Right. Do we have a second? Kemi, your motivation?
So this is something that the general manager has already put in motion, and these were people that would be most relevant. If any other councillors wish to sit on this committee, then that would be considered a friendly amendment.
Right. Is there any discussion? Yes, Sophie, no? Okay. There's no further discussion. We can move to a vote. So all those in favor of the committee and its membership, please raise your placards. 8. All those opposed? 0. And any abstentions? 1. All right. So that carries. The Audit RFP Committee will hereby exist. Is there any more discussion to be had on 7G? Okay, so if not, we can move on to informational business, starting with 8A. This was Rory's point from last week. I spoke to them before council, and they said that if councillors want to discuss it, feel free, but there was nothing to add really to the point. So if there's anyone who wants to mention anything, yes, Roy?
Brief mention that I was given by someone, a friend of mine, the Professors Union or something in Canada created a document essentially how to understand university financial statements when you know nothing about financial statements, and it's kind of like a step-by-step guide to gathering important information. I got a paper copy. I've been told there's online copies. I've been meaning to upload one, find one and upload it to council, but if someone wants that, they can message me and I'll actually get around to doing it, because I'll probably forget until exams are done otherwise.
So there's clearly some interest for that, so you can contact Rowan for the document, or you can upload it in the council group. Or if you want everyone to see it, you can send it to me and I'll send it out. Is there any more discussion about university financial statements? Okay, so if not, we can move on to 8B, and Patrick, this was your point.
Let's try and get my voice back, because I'm still recovering from COVID. I basically just read the motion and then I basically motivate after that.
Okay, but just to clarify, it's not a motion, correct? No, it's
Well,
just...
it's the most, I can't think straight. No, because you will continue to the next meeting, because it'll be more informative with stuff I've researched and basic stuff going on. Basically continue to May, that stuff, before the finance stuff. Okay, basic read it. Whereas the voting volume in Concordia Student Union elections significantly decreasing, whereas the paper ballot is an outdated system for voting procedure. It has its own deficits, whereas many universities such as Student Society of McGill University, Commerce and Administration and Student Association, University of Michigan has adopted a online voting system. Whereas all service at Concordia and as well as Concordia Student Union is shifting towards online form. We resolved that Concordia Student Union should make some progressive moves toward making our election process on a more sustainable. And basically, I said talk about the things that they have done. Also, let me get my things straight. Such as making voting eligible lists available online. It already exists, but also before we resolve, the CSU work towards establishing an online voting system and gradually to be implemented and be gradually transitioning from the current in-person ballot system. But we furthermore in resolve, the Chief Electoral Officer has to hire a software expert to ensure and maintain the safety of the voting system. Basically, the reason I'm moving is because what happened this year's election, the mess that happened, and basically encouraged me more to that we should change it. This is the voting system because of the problems that it have, and there's also this other stuff I'm still thinking about stuff I want to do. Because there's a lot of things we could improve in the elections and for future elections.
Thank you. Dylan and then Sophie.
So to understand, is this a motion that you plan to bring forward at next council to be adopted?
In a way, yeah, but not like this stuff. I'll look at stuff because there's also some policies and stuff, and adding like the ad hoc committee that we have now, be more like the ideal with for campaign, like make it more permanent. And based on that stuff, we could bring up the committee and then based on go towards that thing, changing the policies, make it more better than. And eventually we'll go to that level because it's just a gradual transition towards that. Because my idea of it is basically the main ballot, like executive, council, senate, we like digitize first, and then we still test it for the whole year, and basically see how it goes. And there's a lot of things that could happen, like in financial audit. There's some friend of mine said you should have audits done for the election, and it's other stuff. And there's a lot of stuff I think of, but there's a lot of things that we could improve it for next year.
Thank you. Sophie.
Right.
So this is going to be brought forward next council.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I'm not sure what dates exactly because I'm trying to figure out what dates.
Okay. Yeah, just a couple comments. I noticed in the supporting document that was submitted with this that there.
Yeah, because based on I've been looking at other stuff and on that. Also because the research I had a chance to look over stuff, schools we use a certain system they have now, and basically other stuff. And I had time to talk to not the association of McGill, but I had talked to people from McGill, but because I had questions about the system they have now, and basically that's why I was thinking about it.
Sure. I was just going to point out that I didn't notice any citations in the supporting document.
No, because there was other stuff I didn't really add in there. There was a lot of stuff I didn't chance to get the information stuff, and then, but there's just some ideas that came to my mind when I wrote that part.
Okay. Thank you. Amos? Dylan?
I just wanted to say that moving to an online system does have a lot of benefits associated with it. I think it would be beneficial for the CSU to go that route. There's just a few things that I just wanted to bring up. The gradual transition, just doing dual systems has a lot of problems that could come about. So I think that if there were to be a transition, it can be decided later how that would go about, but transitioning completely within a specific voting bracket for it.
I was thinking like.
Sorry, this is devolving a little bit quickly into back and forth.
And then the second element is for systems. If you're going to be doing more research on this, Concordia actually has the ability to vote online. Their system is very safe. If someone's able to hack into the My Concordia portal, theoretically they have access to all your financial information and all your personal background. It'd be highly illegal for someone to do it, as well as extremely difficult, seeing how the school has people whose responsibility is to ensure the security and security of their online systems that they have. So.
Well, because.
All right, sorry. Wasn't a question.
Let Dylan go.
Sophie?
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of point out that this isn't really a motion, but as someone who studies politics and electoral systems, yeah, there are a lot of issues with dual systems that Dylan pointed out, but I think that there's already an electoral reform ad hoc committee that was formed this semester to try and address some of these issues. So I think that maybe including the electoral reform ad hoc committee that I believe is still formed in putting forward any research would be really helpful, because I find that a lot of the information that's been put forward is kind of open-ended, and there's not a lot of research to back it. There was already a report done in 2014 by the CSU, and it could be updated, and I think that's where the electoral reform ad hoc committee could have been utilized and wasn't this year, to, for whatever reason. But I think that maybe reaching out to the ad hoc committee that already exists on this topic would be a really helpful way going forward before this is brought back to council.
Thank you. Roy?
Anderson.
Eamon? Patrick?
Well, because Michaela asked me to take in charge with that committee, ad hoc committee, but because timing of try to get something together for that certain specific meeting based on this, and we could have done it, but it is, and because of the what's going on with the students, our finals and exam and paper, I was trying to find a way, but I'm open to anything. That's why I'm considering certain things, but also making the committee permanent is my thing that we should put it there, and expand the number of people involved in that committee.
Right, thank you. Is there any more discussion to be had on the online voting point? Right, so if not, we can move on to 8C, which is executive statement, and this was Layla.
Yeah, I'm just gonna read. In view of the recent allegations regarding sexual harassment caused by the Arts and Science Counselor Jonathan Roy and his subsequent resignation, the executive feels it's important to reaffirm our commitment to creating safer spaces and protecting survivors. It is of absolute importance to us as an executive and as an organization to support and, most importantly, to believe survivors. We believe that it is our responsibility to maintain safer spaces, and our reaction to allegations like these must be both survivor-centric and cognizant of the power dynamics that are in play. We are addressing council following these events in an effort to increase transparency, given that there is presently no internal policy in place to handle situations such as these. In our own capacity, we are working in collaboration with other student associations to develop a strong policy that would provide a clearer path to holding elected individuals accountable in situations of sexual violence and misconduct. This is something that the CSU is lacking, and though the creation of a strong policy takes time, we are confident that we can do better on this front and are taking steps to improve accountability and procedure.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion to be had on 8C? Okay, so if not, we can move on to 8D, which is tickets, and Layla, I believe this was yours, yes.
So in accordance with our policy about gifts, I am informing council, so as I'm sure all of you know from my exec report, there's an event happening on Friday that's in collaboration with the Santa Teresa Music Festival, and part of that event, they've given us 5 tickets to give away to students in the lead up to the event, but they have also offered myself 5 tickets to share amongst the executive team, so I'm informing council of that before accepting that gift. and I'm leaving that up to council as to whether or not they feel that it's appropriate for us to accept that gift or what to do with that gift.
Is there any discussion? Yes, Kenny?
What were tickets about? Sorry?
Yeah, so it's for the same music festival that we're giving away tickets to. We're doing the event in collaboration with on Friday. So it's a 3-day music festival, and so it's tickets to the event of the music festival itself.
Yes, Kenny?
Question. Like the proposed tickets were, they proposed it after you had like this like conversation on like organizing the event itself.
So they proposed the collaboration for the event and mentioned that they could provide tickets to give away to students. And then after we started planning the collaboration event, they also mentioned that they would have 5 tickets for organizers, but that wasn't a reason that we chose to work with them or not.
Is there any discussion?
Point of information.
Yes.
Do we have to like motion to accept it?
Okay. Not under the regulations as they are currently. In theory, the executive could just announce that they were taking them or request council to make a motion. It's all up to you. Right, so if there's no further discussion, did you want to add something?
Well, then I'll make a motion because I'd rather this be clear then, that the executive be allowed to accept the 5 tickets to the music festival.
Okay, and second, do you want to motivate or anything?
I mean, there are 5 tickets that are being given away to students, so I don't think it's necessarily, if it was a situation that had been offered from the start, then I would suggest that those tickets be raffled off to students in general. But in this case, it's being offered on top of those tickets. If council's uncomfortable with it, then that's totally understandable, but if they're just going to sit there, then I think it would be nice for some people to enjoy them.
Is there any discussion to be had on the motion? Okay, so if not, we can move to a vote. So all those in favor, please raise your placards. 9, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 0. Perfect. So that carries. Is there anything else to be discussed on 8D? Okay, so if not, we're on question period and business arising. Yes, Daniel?
What festival is the tickets for, just out of curiosity?
Oh, it's the one.
Do you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the one mentioned in my exec report, Santa Teresa.
Okay, any more questions or business arising? Okay, so if not, we can move on to announcements. Yes, Kemi.
Never mind. Nope. I was moving to adjourn.
Announcements? I see. Yes, Layla?
Yes. As some councillors may remember, we have a collaboration budget, and it is being used for the event that we're having on this Friday in collaboration with ASFA, FASA, CASA to a certain extent, I'm not entirely sure how much, ECA and CISA, the International Student Association. So it's an 8-hour event on the terrace. There's going to be a barbecue with free food for students. There's going to be $2 beer, $2 cider, free non-alcoholic drinks. There are going to be games and activities and dogs and a DJ in the evening provided by the festival, and we're going to raffle off tickets. It's a really nice opportunity to relax a little bit before exams or have a nice moment on the terrace. It's going to be at least 9 degrees and hopefully not raining, but there's going to be a very large tent, so you can even come and sit out dry in the rain outside. It's going to be so fun.
Thank you. Ahmed?
It's a time-sensitive issue. A mother of 3 children are facing deportation this Friday, so I urge everyone who can take some time sending letters, calling the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the Minister of Justice. It's an urgent issue. Secondly, the unpaid internship survey is out now, so I urge everyone to complete the survey, share it with your peers. It's important to get more information from the faculties. It will help us to inform everyone about the issue of unpaid internships.
Thank you. Yes, Layla?
For another event that's happening tomorrow, that the CSU is hosting a public training on how to administer naloxone, which can be used to reverse the effects of an overdose caused by fentanyl. I highly recommend that you share the event or attend. It's something that is really affecting students and people in Montreal right now, and it could be a really safe thing to know about or encourage your friends to attend. even if you yourself aren't somebody who perhaps uses recreational drugs or drugs of any kind. Some of your friends might hear you might be in a situation where you could potentially save someone's life. So it's free, it's happening tomorrow evening. I'll share the event on the Facebook.
Great. Is there anything else? Okay, before we adjourn, just a quick note. The student status check was done and I sent off the results, and everyone is a student except for an undergraduate student except me, but you granted me honorary membership, so all of that is normal. Just thought I'd throw that out there. All right, if there's no more announcements, Rowan?
I move to adjourn.
Yep, perfect. Seconded by Patrick. All right, it's 8:30 and we're adjourned for 8:37. Thank you everyone for showing up.